Welcome to the monthly LeanLaw Masterclass webinar. My name is Chase Sullivan, and I am the Director of Success here at LeanLaw. And I used to get paid using the LeanLaw time tracking tools. Gary, on the other hand, that was a long time ago. Gary, on the other hand, I don't think has ever gotten paid using LeanLaw time tracking. But Gary, I understand you have quite a bit of experience tracking time in a previous life.
That is true. I have paid people using the LeanLaw system, including our electronic payment system. So we eat our dog food there to some extent.
Yes, we do.
But I've started practicing law in 1987. And when I did, we were actually tracking time using a day timer, which you probably don't even know what that is.
Is that like a sundial?
It's kind of, yeah. It's a book that has, sort of a calendar laid out on it. And you write your time down on that at the appropriate time during the day. It was actually the inspiration for the calendar view in LeanLaw.
Oh my goodness.
Because of all the ways I've kept time over the years, that was my favorite. That one spoke to me. When I moved to another firm in the early 90s, my current firm, they actually had these crazy time slips that I know you've seen, Chase, that had carbon copies, and there were like several strips on each page, and you would write your time down and peel the slip off and hand a stack of these little slips to your secretary to put in your time. So I like to think we've come a ways since that, but it's an interesting thing because even having moved to electronic tools, it really, time tracking is kind of a bummer. I don't know anybody who likes to do it.
So that's actually what we're here to talk about today. So anyone who's been a long time participant in these webinars knows we used to actually cover, we used to focus more on the LeanLaw product, and we've kind of shifted for the moment to focus more about concepts in the legal software space, specifically things that LeanLaw covers. So this month, we're going to be talking about time entry, timekeeping, billing time, billing non-billable time. And I, in my quest to not be the only person who gets to talk, have invited Gary here to join us today as a very experienced attorney, as someone who's used all the methods of time entry and timekeeping all the way back to goodness knows. I mean, that sounds like
you were born.
So okay, wait. let's not expose me that far. So
I think that was exposing me mostly. So.
Well, I mean, when we invite you on as the 35-year practicing attorney, that pretty well does it. So that's what we're going to discuss.
I do want to entice everyone that we have some interesting things to show about what's coming from a timekeeping standpoint in the product. So stay tuned. If you're not excited about this conversation, toward the end, we're going to show you some exciting things that are coming your way.
That is true. We are looking forward to that at the end of the conversation here. So we're looking to keep this, like I said, very conversational. So chat and questions are open. Gary and I are going to stop and ask for all of your opinions and input and potentially advice throughout the conversation. So feel free to put this on in the background, but pop back in when you've got comments or questions or even advice. I mean, Gary and I are working to build a modern timekeeping tool here. And so your input is very much valued and appreciated on this. All right, Gary. So you've been doing this for a long time. What are all the different ways you track time? You told me about carbon paper, the thing that predates carbon paper. What else? I mean, were you out there with a stopwatch and a pad for a while? I mean, what is the evolution of timekeeping been for you?
I mean, really, there's just been the paper methods, and sometimes that's just a yellow pad, and you write things down, and then at some point you put them in. Ultimately, there was, I mean, my firm, law firm, uses SurePoint at this point until we get them over onto to LeanLaw, which cannot be soon enough for me. And it's got kind of a miserable UI,
Mhm.
and is just, it's fine. You can put a time entry in it, but it's not convenient. It certainly doesn't read your mind like you might like as a time
Mhm.
entry system. And so, and sometimes you can't get to it easily, so you wind up writing things down. So, my experience with timekeeping is it's just a headache
Right.
as you go along, and we'll I know we're going to talk more about this, but and nobody's really improved it since the 90s, as far as I can tell.
Right. It
It's
sounds like what you were
just
describing
filling in a
earlier.
database form.
Right. Whether it's on paper or whether it's a spreadsheet or a fancier spreadsheet, it sounds like it largely hasn't changed since way back in the 80s. I mean, now it's on a computer, but it's the same manual process, whether it's
Once
digital.
upon a time, lawyers worked much more in fixed fees and other types of billing arrangements than they have for the last 50 years or so. The
What?
billable hour was an invention of the 60s and 70s, as I understand it. And now we're moving back a little bit, but ever since you've had to track your time, it's been a pain for people.
And we've just kind of normalized how much of a bummer it is to have to track time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When you think about, whenever you talk to an operator in a mid-sized firm, or any firm with a number of users, one of their biggest headaches is always to get the lawyers to get their time in by the end of the
Right.
billing cycle.
Right.
And from the lawyer's standpoint, you don't like to do this. It's an interruption. So you're not excited to do it. But the real pain is on the operator's end, because it's like, hey, I have to get the bills out, and I can't do that until the time is in. And that's a perennial challenge, that I don't know that some firms are just very disciplined about it. And they've kind of created a culture where it happens better than others, but I think this is a pain point just about everywhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if most firms are still using time tracking as their primary billing strategy, you're you're going to end up herding cats at the end of the month or whatever the billing cycle is to make sure they've got their time entered.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is about certain people adopt this. Certain people, adopt the discipline of keeping time very easily.
Right.
And others don't. And I was telling you the story yesterday. There was a lawyer in my current firm who he was an engineer before he was a
Mhm.
lawyer. So,
Right.
very precise and seemingly disciplined, and use spreadsheets to keep his time through the month, but he would never put it in. And we're always, I mean, every month he worked on my matters. He's an environmental lawyer.
Mhm.
And so he worked on my matters, and I had to flog him every month to get his time in so I could get the bills out, which drove me crazy because, along the way I had developed a discipline so that I would put my time in
Right.
immediately. And we'll also talk about the data as to why that's such a good idea. But he just couldn't do it, and I never understood it, and until he became, and ultimately he became a judge where he didn't have to track his time anymore.
I mean, that's one way to do it, right? Get to the point where you don't have to switch billing types or switch careers
Exactly.
entirely. Just nope, I'm not doing it.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
refuse. So, as an attorney, what is it that bothers you so much about timekeeping, or from what you've heard from others around the coffee? What do
Yeah.
attorneys do? I mean, you can't drink all day. You start with coffee, I assume, at some point. So the coffee bar in the morning and then the cocktail bar in the afternoon.
You have a very strange idea about what it's like for most lawyers. Mostly it's just heads down all
Oh,
day, and grab a cup of coffee in the coffee room, and go take that to your desk and work with it.
So you
Yeah.
said it interrupts you, which is a pain. You're jamming out working
Well,
on things.
yeah. I mean, I wanted to make sure that I got this in here, but just thinking about timekeeping, it occurred to me that it's like Congress.
Hmm.
So everybody hates it, but you
Okay.
still need it. Nobody knows how to make it better. So I
So what does that say about litigation attorneys? The
I
the
don't know.
attorneys that work in that sphere. So you're telling me they gotta not only do they have to deal with government bureaucracy and the obnoxiousness that comes with that, they also then have to deal with the the Congress that is tracking their own time. Yeah,
I got it.
it's a notice. Yeah, someone in the chat, Thaddeus, saying the Congress comparison is 100%. All right.
So we hope to have some suggestions about timekeeping. I don't know if we'll have time for suggestions about Congress,
I
but
think we could be here all afternoon trying to find ways to improve just time entry, let alone fixing Congress.
there we go. There we go. So you asked, what is it that about timekeeping that is, such a pain? And
Yeah,
we had a chat yesterday, and I was thinking about it, and it's like, you get into your groove as a lawyer. Either you're on the phone and you like to, you talk to people and you're negotiating. That's what really, kind of winds your watch.
hmm,
You are, or you like to draft documents, or you like to analyze problems. But, whatever that is, timekeeping is an interruption to that. So it's not only does it like takes you away from what you like to do to something that you don't like to do,
hmm.
it also there's kind of a buzzkill there, right? So it's like I'm doing what winds my watch in my work, and I have to stop doing that and write the time down.
Yeah,
And that that it just takes that whole, you have to build that whole feeling back up.
right.
And if you're writing your time down contemporaneously like you should be, then you've got this constant bunch of interruptions during the day. Not
It's like it's like watching Netflix and then having to stop every 10 minutes and summarize what's just happened. And so by the time you come back to watch it, like by the time you unpause, you're like, I have no idea what I was doing or why I was enjoying this moment. It's just it
right,
totally kills the mood of whatever you're enjoying in the
right.
moment.
So there's a good psychological reasons why we don't want to do this,
Right.
right? So I think that was really kind of telling to me that we're working against people's best work habits
Mhm.
in having to keep time. So the
Right.
more, I think a primary goal here is let's try to create as few interruptions as possible. But when you think about that, it's like it goes totally contrary to this advice, which is keep your time contemporaneously. And I don't know if this is a good time to talk about the research about that.
Yeah.
Um, but we worked with a management consultant named Anne Gwynn a while back, and she did some really good summary research about keeping time. And it's really pretty shocking that if you don't keep your time on the day that you do it, you lose 10% of your time.
Which is crazy.
Right,
I mean that
10% of your time. Oh, here we go.
yeah, so
Okay,
I
so
just posted that link in the chat for everybody. So it's you're likely to lose 10% of your billable hours by the end of the day. If you don't get it in the next day, you'll lose 25%. And by the end of the week, it's a full 50%. I mean,
50%,
for
right,
an industry that relies largely on entering, tracking, and getting paid by time, the potential of up to 50% of your billable, like your billables just going out the window, that's like hiring a contractor and they only pay you or they only charge you for half the work.
right.
That's literally what's going on here.
It's insanely inefficient.
Right.
Yet, in terms of just your regular workflow, you've got every incentive not to keep your time because of the interruption and all of the problems that creates for the way that you work. So it's a really messed up system that I don't know anybody who likes it. So we had a question here about why don't you just estimate the times that you worked? And I think that's what happens a lot of time, because I don't think most attorneys are that good at keeping time contemporaneously. But and I think about when my practice was really blowing and going. I mean, it was $1 million plus practice, and I had probably 50 clients at a time. So when somebody calls you in the middle of the day and you forget to write it down, or you think of something that you have to do, and you turn to that for 15 minutes, it's really easy to forget that. So it requires a lot of discipline to just go, okay, I got to write this down before I lose it.
So
one way or another.
You're telling me I should I should hire attorneys that have tons of clients, so that the really quick emails and phone calls they're going to forget to charge me for.
Well, I guess you want to hire attorneys with tons of clients, because they're probably better attorneys than the ones that don't.
That's probably true. And in the secret hopes that they also forget to bill me for that 10-minute conversation that they would have billed me 2 6-minute increments for.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah,
it's kind of interesting, because I mean, I have a history in support and I work in success. So I hear from our users a lot, and we don't hear many complaints about time tracking as a whole. I mean, the tool does time tracking as well as anything else. I mean, I would sure hope so. That's one of the things we launched with originally, but we don't get a lot of baseline complaints about how much people just hate the process of timekeeping. It almost feels like people have accepted that timekeeping is going to be a struggle and suck.
Right. It's like complaining about that you're going to die one day. It's like,
right.
Get used to it, right? And it's sorry, that was probably not the best analogy there, but it has a little bit of that ring to it. And yeah, I mean, we hear about every little pain people have in the invoicing process,
right?
Because they think we can do something about it, and hopefully they're often right. But when we talk about time, we don't get that much complaint about timekeeping, just because it's that thing everybody thinks they have to do and knows that they have to do.
Right. Now, you were telling me yesterday, we were kind of chatting about this before, and you mentioned a famous tennis player. I made the comment, like, it seems like people have just accepted they hate timekeeping, but that's part of what they do. And you shared a story about a tennis player who had kind of a similar sentiment.
Yeah, it's true. It was the book is called Open, and it's by Andre Agassi. The first line of the book is, "My name is Andre Agassi and I hate tennis." And but it was the thing he hated about tennis was exactly what made him great, which is that his dad made him hit 1 million tennis balls before he was 10 years old. And that's the kind of 10,000 hour rinse, wipe, repeat thing you need to do to become a great tennis player. But it's surely took all the fun out of it for him.
Right. And I feel like that's a similar sentiment with law. Like we were talking earlier about how, why is time entry or why is keeping time such a bummer? It takes you out of the moment of what you're enjoying, the enjoyment you're getting out of work, hopefully. You're out there hitting 1 million tennis balls instead of solving interesting problems or working with people to solve, what they hired you to do. I can imagine writing a book after being an attorney and saying, "My name is Chase Sullivan and I hate being an attorney."
I don't know that attorneys generally write books about that. Probably some do, but it is a pretty commonly shared sentiment. And I think I don't know how many attorneys I know who have gone in-house or done something else like that, and the main reason they cite is because they no longer have to track their time.
Right. So David has an interesting comment. Confused. Most lawyers love money and timekeeping is how they get paid. So isn't it a bit much to complain about it? Which I said the same thing to Gary yesterday. Like, Why is it so hard? You'd think, okay, so if I stop and enter my time, I will get paid. And if I don't enter my time, I won't get paid. Like that's a pretty strong correlation I feel that most people would get. And yet somehow we find ourselves giving away 10, 25, 50% of our billable hours.
Well, it's really an interesting thing because, you know, a business like ours that's focused on the business of law
Mm-hmm.
is, you know, it's like you think that your client, the lawyers, are going to be interested in the business of law,
Right.
and so many of them are not. You know, they got into law because they like analyzing things, or they like
Mm-hmm.
arguing, or they like helping people, or,
Right.
you know, there's all of these reasons, and that's what they want to do. Yet they have all these business things that they have to do that interrupt all of that and make
Right.
and take them away from that. And timekeeping is just one of those, but definitely, you know, one that they complain about a lot. So, you know, it certainly is how you you know, it is the step you have to take to make money. But I don't know anyone who likes it. It's not like, oh boy, here's another $250 for me because I'm billing a half an hour or an hour.
Right. Maybe if there was an immediate payoff, like I write my hour of time down and it's suddenly a $1,000 check appears out of thin air. Maybe that would help a little bit, but
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, is there's such a long time between the act of writing the time down and when the
Mhm.
money comes in, that there's no, you know, uh, emotional connection
Right.
there. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if the money instantly appeared in your Venmo account at the minute you did the work, then maybe that would be different. But a little
Maybe.
bell would ring.
Yeah. Thaddeus has a comment. Prepaid retainers help the joy of timekeeping. Yeah. I mean that's a bit more immediate response there.
Amen. I think there really is there's a lot to that, and that we were big advocates of prepaid retainers for sure.
Absolutely. So Karen actually has an interesting comment that you kind of mentioned earlier in law. So Karen says in law school, they were taught about law. They're not taught, with few exceptions, about how to run a business, which is interesting because I remember that was something we had said way back in the day.
Mhm.
A reason to add an outside accountant to a firm was attorneys did not get into law largely to practice accounting. They really wanted to focus on being and pursuing law, not running a business or playing bookkeeper or accountant or tracking their time, right? And like you said,
Right.
that's not why people get into it. They do not. I don't know of any attorneys, maybe they're out there, that get out. The reason they get out of bed in the morning is to track time. They're getting out of bed to solve problems and have conversations with people.
Well, it really is interesting. I mean, there was I went to Stanford Law School
Mm-hmm.
in the 80s, and there was not one single course. There were plenty of courses about business law, but there was not one single course about running a business. There was one called the economics of practicing law. So it sort of dealt with it on a theoretical level, but nothing
Mm-hmm.
practical whatsoever, even though you're like 300 feet from one of the best business
Right.
schools in the world. There is,
You'd
there was
think a
no
little bit.
connection between those things.
You'd think there'd be a little bit of crossover between one of the best law schools and one of the best business schools, and yet somehow both of
It,
them come out with degrees and
it,
have no idea how to do the other.
I will say that's getting better, but you know, it's still, at least at Stanford, it's very high level.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, you know, you're going to go learn to be a partner at a law firm there. You may learn, you know, other law business connections, but not that sort of thing. Yeah, so there's a big disconnect there that explains a lot when you start to look at how inefficiently that law firms run, and just sort of a lack of attention to the business side of things.
Right. And it feels like a much larger scale. And I don't know if this is a generational thing or if it's if this is common across for everyone. I remember coming out of school in the first high school and the first time doing my own taxes. And a lot of my peers at the time were very bitter or sour because no one ever taught us in high school how to do our own taxes. And I feel like this is just the very blown up version of that. You know, you get into law and you're like, wait, I have to now run a business and do my books? I thought I just had to retain clients and like write my time down. And now you're telling me I got to do all this other stuff?
Right. Yeah. You got to hire and fire people and,
right.
You know, do all the stuff that pay unemployment insurance taxes and all these other things. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of fun things that you learn.
But not in law school.
Not in law school. Nope.
Oh, geez. So do you think timekeeping is ever going to go away? You mentioned earlier, it started back, billable hours were an invention of the 60s and 70s. Prior to that, it was fixed fees. Do you think we're going to go back to that or replace the billable hour with something else?
Yeah, I mean, way back in the day, you had like simple retainers and other things, but from everything I can tell, it was much simpler back then. Then it started. Then the move was to the billable hour, and I mean, the amount of law that's practiced has exploded over that period of time as the things have gotten more complex. And now, you know, and a lot of pushback from clients on billable hours. So, you know, I'd say, what is it, 10 or 15 years, there's been this push to try and replace them, and fixed fees being the most common way of doing that. And they're definitely gaining ground. And I don't have any statistics about, you know, sort of how that has grown over the years, except that I think it was fairly rare 20 years ago. But I had Fred check our database, and as of now, as for this year, the billing through our system is about 1/3 of fixed fees and 2/3 time-based.
Wow.
So that was a little higher than I expected. I was expecting maybe 20% fixed fees, but that's definitely growing. You know, I never figured out how to make it work in my practice to do fixed fees. I was, you know, I did land use and environmental law, and it was always some big custom thing or other, a development or a litigation of some kind. And I was just horrendous at estimating how much things were going to cost. So I think I lost money every time I tried to do a fixed fee.
Oh man.
I will admit. So, and I don't think that's unusual. I think, I don't know any lawyer who is good at estimating fees. And you know, there's a book out there called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
I have not.
And it kind of explains why your brain works in a way where you know, the things that you think you can just know off of the top of your head, you're often quite bad at, you know, and estimating fees is one of those things where you have a feeling based on what you know, but then if you actually you know, but that's not particularly accurate. In fact, it's radically inaccurate. And you know, estimating fees is the kind of thing where you need to go back and look at data, and you know, really understand, okay, what is the scope of work here, and maybe you can understand it that way. Now that gets much easier if it's something you do over and over and over again, which I rarely did in my practice, and I don't have a very high tolerance for that kind of repeated work, honestly.
It's something that I know we see a lot in IP and similar firms. In fact, Thaddeus in the chat saying that they do a lot of packages for startups. So I'm going to guess it's a lot of like same kind of work, same kind of paperwork, bundled over and over again. And something we coach firms on, or pretty consistently, is part of being effective at fixed or flat fees, recurring fees, is making sure you go back and do that analysis, so that eval, are you tracking? One, it requires you to track your time against it, which is a bummer, but You, like you said, you got to have that data to back it up. But you got to go back and check and make sure that what you're built, you're not losing money, right? You're not spending more time on these fees that you thought, well, I'll just cap it and send off a single bill and not have to worry about tracking my time. But you got to go back and make sure you do check that. In fact, Thaddeus even added, in California, they still have to track time under fixed fees, which is news to me. I feel like that kind of
defeats. It's a requirement, but I think it's a good practice for sure.
Right.
That's interesting. Oh, it's a rule.
New rule. All right.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so there's an idea that we talked about on the fixed fee scale, and potentially other fees too, that I just wanted to throw out to this group and kind of get a reaction about. Maybe this is not on our roadmap at all right now, but a future product. So we use a product called Carta for LeanLaw, which allows you to keep track of your shareholders and their holdings. And so they've got to be really good at that.
It's something that we use not just for shareholders, but like salaried employees. We use it to estimate compensation ranges and similar.
Right. So Carta became sort of the thing that every startup used to track their investors.
Right.
So now they have this, they have data from 20,000 startups. And part of the data that they keep track of is your employee's salary and, their equity holdings. And they took that salary data and they allow you to opt into a database where you can see anonymized information about not just your salaries, but all of those companies' salaries, which is incredibly valuable because, when you're trying to price a senior engineer or a QA lead or salesperson, it's really hard to find good data. I mean, Glassdoor and things like that are okay, but this is kind of the gold standard for that data. So here's what I'm wondering, just using that as an analogy, what if we created an opt-in database in LeanLaw for what people charge in fixed fees or what certain, types of matters cost to prosecute, so you've got some pricing data as a law firm to go, okay, here's kind of how this works and how the market works. I mean, haven't really looked at, are there antitrust implications to doing that? But, one of the things, strange characteristics of the legal market is that there's very little transparency about pricing. I mean, we can't quite compete with the doctors yet for being non-transparent on the pricing side. But
I don't know if they know how it works.
Exactly. But for lawyers, it's like even just understanding the rates in your market, you can go once in a while, there'll be a fee award. You can go check the court records.
Right.
You hear what you hear around town, but how do you know how to price yourself? And it seems like that might be something interesting. We got a note that Clio has done some pricing studies. I believe that's correct, but I wonder if that's actionable enough, and if there would be interest in some other kind of pricing data. So
right, because you're really talking about like a real time or a in the moment, not like a what's the annual analysis, but like a
right, exactly, to say
like a month to month thing.
Right. If I'm a litigator with 10 years experience in this market, what's the market rate?
Right.
Or if I'm charging for a trademark in New York City, what's the market rate for that?
Right. So now you have made a second significant suggestion on how to technologically advance the legal industry, which historically is one of the slowest to adopt new changes.
Yeah, well, we have at least one hand raised here, and I just wanted to seed that idea a little bit because that could be an interesting product down the road.
Right.
Um,
So speaking of tools and how we change the way we interact with time entry, what else do you have in mind? What else could we do to modernize, to improve, to change, or not just looking ahead, but looking to the ways that it was done in the past? We talked about fixed fees, the way we did it before the 60s. Moving forward, what all does that look like? I mean, you've shared something like Carta to figure out modernizing fixed fees, potentially hourly rates, but that still doesn't solve our problem of hating time or hating keeping time.
right, right. Well, I think I did see a couple of comments about different kinds of carrots and sticks that
Right.
people use to help incent people to do a better job keeping track of their time. I've heard, you could give bonuses, you can, withhold paychecks, things like that. Actually, in the state of Idaho, like judges, for example, are not supposed to be paid if they have not issued all of the pending opinions within
Really?
30 days. I don't think
Wow.
that rule is actually enforced, but they made attempts at that, and I've never really heard of that being successful in private practice or in the judicial side.
Right.
But I am curious if if anybody. Oh, okay. So someone says the Intellectual Property Association compiles and publishes data. Yeah. Okay.
We'll have to
Interesting.
check into that, see if
Yep.
we can
Yeah, that's
get
interesting.
something rolling.
Okay. So I just have never heard anything that seemed very exciting about how or just anything, just sort of the typical management tools to get people to track time
Right.
and do that more reliably just haven't been very good from what I understand. So, the other thing that you hear about is sort of automating time tracking.
Right.
And, we've got some things to show on that front.
Like what if we could just, the computer knows everything I'm doing. It knows I have calendared events and emails and phone calls, and I'm responding to things. And if it could just be smart enough to figure out and put that all into one place and package it together, so I wouldn't have to retype it all down. Because that's the annoying thing, right? Like in my head in the computer, I'm doing work all day and it's tracking it. It's just not all tracking it in one place automatically.
Right.
And if it could do that.
Yeah. No, that's kind of the flying car analogy here is
Right.
if once we have flying cars, we'll be able to automatically track our time. And I'm wondering if we're getting close to that. I mean, traditionally you've had things like Chrometa, which Thaddeus just brought
mentioned.
up. And what I've always heard about Chrometa is it's too much of a good thing. So it's like it's recording pretty much every keystroke.
Oh,
So you just get buried in data.
Yeah.
And I think some of the enterprise tools have things like that, so it's like, oh, you did this on your calendar,
Right.
and
Right.
so when I saw it, this was several years ago, it was just like this giant page of stuff. So it was going to be more trouble to go through that than to actually figure it out.
So you've now created a Wikipedia page for every day that you then have to go through and pick out your time.
Exactly. So, and that may be a good tool. Don't get me wrong, but it hasn't had wide enough adoption for me to feel like, okay, they're really onto something there.
Right.
And there are some cool things like Word allows you to automatically, understand how much time was spent in editing a document.
Yep.
So that's pretty interesting. But again, I don't know that anybody's it's like now you have, how do you extract that and how do you make it easy enough to get that on your timesheet that it's not more trouble to use that than to, just write something down as you go along.
So there's all this, one of the big things in the news in the last 3 months has been ChatGPT, and its claim to fame is being able to take a lot of data and bring it down into a package that humans can understand, and that it's usually quite actionable. So what if we took all that information and said, all right, here you go, ChatGPT, figure it out for me?
Funny you would ask that, Chase, because I decided to give that a try for this today, which is kind of interesting. So,
and what did it tell you? What did our AI overlords share with you?
Well, essentially, can I share my screen and just show everybody?
Yeah, you should be able to.
All right, let's see here. Share my screen. Let's see.
Should be able
Which
to.
of my many screens? It's
Pick one screen, any screen.
all right. Are you seeing that now?
Yep, I do see that.
Okay, so I have made a chat GPT query. I'm assuming everybody knows what that is at this point.
Maybe what it is, but not how it works. And we definitely don't have the time to get into how it works.
Right. So the large language model, I wrote a query to this thing, which says you're a legal assistant helping an attorney named Perry Mason prepare his daily timesheet, which requires detailed time entries assigned to specific clients and matters. Mr. Mason has given you the following information. He gave you a matter list with a few matters, a few calendar entries, emails, texts, phone numbers.
Yep.
And let's see.
So you basically gave it the parameters. You took your activity from your email logs, say.
Yeah, this is stuff we think we could pretty easily replicate as a simple data file.
Right.
And it's sloppy. It doesn't match up necessarily to these things. So let's see what happens when I regenerate the response.
So we're just proof of concepting this, right? Like crazy back of the cocktail napkin idea.
Right. Okay. Let's see.
And what does it give us?
Why is it not? Oh, it's
still going?
It's still going. It took a lot longer than I expected here. Oh, here we go. And it's starting to generate my timesheet.
Look at that. And it's even got leads codes.
It's even adding the leads codes.
So we definitely want to check and make sure those are still accurate. But I mean, it's doing the thing, Gary.
What blew me away is as you start to look at these, it's like, oh, okay, we did a text. And it assumed, I assume you spent 5 minutes on this text. And then that you spent 15 minutes on an email. And then of course we had time structures for the meetings.
Right.
So it basically created a perfect timesheet. And these are the correct leads codes. I cheated and I had done this before. So let me just show you the one it did before. So, and then it tells you what those assumptions were. 5 minutes for email and text, 15 minutes for a phone call. So essentially with that simple data text, it correctly identified the client and matter, the amount of time, the description, and added the leads codes as well.
Oh my goodness.
It's I was really impressed with that. And it's not crazy to think a computer can automate a timesheet.
I mean, of the things that computers have done, automating a timesheet is not technologically. We've gone to the moon with them, for Christ's sake.
Usually you get problems with these with data ambiguity and fuzziness, and this handled this kind of fuzziness extremely well, which gives me some great hopes for what we might be able to do with it to automate this whole thing.
Right.
So that's what ChatGPT might be able to do. So I was pretty stoked to see that. I'm going to stop sharing that one and put that one away. Oh, let's see.
Looks like Thaddeus wants that query that you gave to ChatGPT so that
Oh, okay.
they can
Let's
try it
see.
as well.
Let
You want
me
to grab that and
find
put it
that.
in the chat? Well, that's definitely a modern step for time entry right there, or keeping track of time.
Right. Let's see if I can, see if this will hold my message here.
Might be too big of a query, but
all right, let's try it. All right, where do I? Where is the, okay.
The chat should be down
Send
at the
button.
bottom.
It's not behaving well. Sorry. I will do that. Yes. Does not want to give me the ability to send that.
We'll get that to you at the end, Thaddeus.
Yeah.
We'll
Sorry
grab your
about
email
that.
from Zoom and get that sent over to you right afterwards. So Gary, I know you'd also asked one of our internal team, our product team, about changes we might be making to the way that time entry works at LeanLaw. And I think you've got a little bit to show off to us, or show off to the audience, and maybe get their input on things.
Yes. So I'm going to show you a little video of what's kind of on the change board for the for our timekeeping and a few other features. And there's going to be a place in there where we look at a new timekeeper analytics, which are under construction right now. So the thing that we're looking for feedback on, which will go immediately into the product within the next few weeks, actually, is going to be the timekeeping analytics. So what analytics do you want your timekeepers to see? Is it just billable hours? Is it billed dollars? What other things are there? So let me run that, share the screen and run that video. And I might stop it for that part of this, but so what we're looking at here is a new timesheet. This is the calendar area.
Yep.
And what you saw on the side there, and let me go back to that for just a second so I can show it. These are events right here. These are events that might be a calendar entry. Typically these are, but things that would be sort of dotted lined in on your calendar so you could decide whether to include them on your timesheet.
Gotcha.
This is using like a Google calendar integration. We'll also have MS365, of course. Then when we go to the list view, it's going to have the source of the time entries and a little more information there.
Oh, interesting.
Now, these are the analytics that we're talking about, billing, total, et cetera. Let me stop there and go back to that one. So, we're going to have a dashboard here for timekeepers and ultimately for operators and managing partners and others. But this is going to be the first thing that comes out, and it'll have like, how much have you billed over this month? How many hours of time entries? What unprocessed entries do you have, like events that have not been processed? And then some visualizations of those. And so we're very interested in what would be most valuable there. So if you have thoughts about what we should do there, we would love to hear that.
So this is analytics or information for individual timekeepers to see about their own time.
Yes, this is what the timekeepers would see.
Gotcha.
Right. And now this is more on, how adding the time entries would go. This is what you just saw there was the history of how of the changes in the time entry area. So your audit,
love to see
a list
that.
of clients and matters. Now this is where when you're reviewing the time, this would be, and then we also would include now we have a collection area. So when you're sending emails for electronic payment, it would show the status of those emails. That's already available in LeanLaw Payments. And then we're going to have an onboarding section as well, where you can send clients engagement letters, get the payments terms set up, etc. Okay, so that's kind of a whirlwind tour of what's happening. I definitely couldn't keep up with the video the way I wanted to.
Can you go back to the section that's showing us the timekeeper specific information?
I would say that was about, let's see, maybe here.
Like 20 seconds.
All right, let's see. Hang on. I think it was right after this. There we go. Yes. Okay. Here's that part.
So as a attorney who entered time, what's valuable to you in seeing unprocessed entries? Like I'm not an attorney. I don't actively track my time. Why should I care about having?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and an unprocessed entry is something a lot of our clients may not be used to at this point, because again, we're assuming we're going to be bringing in information from other sources that may lead to time entries, right? So we're looking at, so these may be calendar entries.
Right.
And it's like, okay, are we going to turn those into billable items? And so if you've got unprocessed entries, you've got potential time that you can fill in based on, information that's been brought into LeanLaw.
Interesting. Okay.
And, the billing, and I mean, this would be, I assume as it's saying billing, it's time that has been billed as opposed to work in progress or something else, time entries, but again, these are just plugs. What we're trying to figure out is what are the most valuable things to put in there. And I expect there would also be some, maybe not in the first iteration, but in the second or third iteration, the ability to say, I want to put a customized report in there based on, things that are particularly important to my firm.
Right. It's almost like if we can figure out a way to shorten the gap between entering time and getting paid. There's the billing side of that, right? But then as far as time entry goes and communicating to timekeepers or individual users, you've tracked your time. Now here's where it's at. It's like when you buy when you buy something on Amazon, it's going to be here in 2 days. But you still go back and check that email every couple hours. Like, where is it at? Is it here yet?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's that there's some interesting psychology in that, because I can see one school of thought saying, all I want my timekeepers to see is what time they put in, because their job ends when the time is in.
Right.
But do you get better results from those time entry and timekeepers if you are a little more transparent than that and say, okay, here's what your time entries lead to. Here's the time billed, here's the time collected. And that's a matter of firm culture as well as other things. So you could do it either way. And we know firms that will want to keep things like NPS scores on here, net promoter scores, they're actually pinging their clients for satisfaction as to particular timekeepers. And we picked a partner for these data visualizations who will allow us to bring in data from sources other than LeanLaw and QuickBooks. So, that's a possibility to have a data feed from, Delighted or whatever your NPS provider is, so you can have that type of data. So, as you're thinking about what you would want to see, you don't necessarily have to be limited to what's in my billing or accounting data. You could potentially have other things, other data sources that you tap into for that.
Right. But I mean, like you said, it comes down to firm culture, but I know from what I've been seeing is there are more and more firms interested in having their attorneys connected to this, kind of pulling back the veil and showing them, hey, this is what's in progress. This is where your activity's at. This is what your accounts receivable looks like for the time and expenses and fees that you've entered, and kind of connecting or closing the gap between the person doing the work and actually getting paid. So they know they have that satisfaction or that closure, I guess, of knowing where their package is at, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's, any manner of things you might want to put in here. I think I remember I was in a firm in San Diego when I practiced there that was fairly transparent with associates, and so it put overhead. It showed you your collections versus overheads, sort of a profitability analysis. And it's, with the right data from QuickBooks and the right data from LeanLaw, that's something that is, you could produce as part of this.
And that was way back in the day.
That was that was so long ago, I barely want to think about it.
All right, we won't go there.
As the firm that I was at has been swallowed and swallowed and swallowed, and is now part of the largest law firm in the world. So geez. That's how far that has gone.
Yeah, there's a history lesson in and of itself.
And I did just want to say that, this is just a plug. This is just a picture, basically. But the actual dashboard is under construction right now. And talking to Gabe, our product lead, he said we can expect that to be released by June 15th. So we are right on the cusp of making this. So your comments are very much appreciated about how we make this dashboard as good as it can be. And then there will be more dashboards coming after that. Yeah,
that's just around the corner. So, I mean, we're running right up to the line on getting feedback and input. And I mean, we're always willing and looking for feedback, even when things have been put into production, but it's certainly a lot easier to change them before we hit the big red send button.
Yes. So if you think of anything, please reach out and let us know. Gabe is anxiously awaiting your feedback.
Great. Well, on that note, Gary, we're just about on the hour, so I think we can go ahead and get wrapped up. It's definitely been a fantastic conversation about the struggles of timekeeping, all the way from tennis analogy and hitting 1 million tennis balls before you're 10, all the way to querying ChatGPT to enter our time for us, which, boy, if we could get that figured out.
And Chase, are you going to send the ChatGPT query?
If you want to send that to me, I can send it out to Thaddeus who asked for it. Yeah.
Okay. We'll
make
sure we get that sent out.
Cool.
And next time we'll deal with Congress.
That's right. Yep. So today is timekeeping. Tomorrow is Congress. No, next month we're actually going to be talking with Emery over at Gravity Legal about payments, and specifically modernizing firm payments using electronic payments. So we've had him on before, and he's a fantastic guest. Looking forward to having him again. Gary, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you in the office later this week. And
all right.
Thank you to everyone who's joined. Thaddeus, thank you for your input, and thank you to everyone who's engaged. I hope that this style of masterclass people find to be rewarding and interesting, and if they are, we'll keep doing them. So we will see everyone next month.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.